What's up, everyone? Welcome to this podcast. It doesn't have a name yet, but I'm Ron Alfaro, and today I'm doing my very first podcast. So this is episode one, and my guest today is none other than Tiffany Chow, who I had the pleasure to be on her podcast last week. Tiffany, how are you?
Hey, Ronald, I am doing amazing. Thank you for letting me be your first podcast, number one. That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes, huh? But I'm sure it's going to turn out all right.
Eh.
So we've met before, and then we've also met through Zoom, and then we did a podcast for your podcast, right? I was a guest. And one thing that I remember before we get going to like the real estate is, if I remember correctly, you used to live on the West Coast, California?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Living on the East Coast my whole life, visiting California twice. I always have this question for anybody that moves from the West Coast to the East Coast. Why? Because it's so humid on the East Coast. Why would you leave that weather from the West Coast?
Okay, so first of all, I love humidity. Like people hate it. They're like, oh, it's so gross. I'm all sticky. I love it. And like I like to be warm. I don't like to be dry. I just like the water in the air. And like coming from California, right? We went through several years of a drought. There's
Mhm.
no rain, and so I personally like it. The weather doesn't bother me. It does get a little bit warm in the middle of the day, but I'm usually inside. Other than that, it's awesome. And in terms of real estate, which is kind of why I moved here, the opportunities are really abundant over here, and so I love it so far.
Well, I have heard that California is a tough market for sure. But I will say this, I'm almost speechless. I've never heard anybody say they love the humidity.
Yeah.
um, all right, so what led you to real estate? Let's talk about your journey, how your work career, what path you've taken, what brought you into the world of real estate investment.
Right. And so I guess been I've had real estate as part of my life in a way. Like my parents growing up, my mom was a real estate agent for like 30 years. Like my whole life growing up, she'd like, take us to open houses, like take us to appointments. We'd just sit in the car
Mm-hmm.
waiting, or we'd go inside. Sometimes we'd pass out flyers at open houses. And so my dad was a mortgage broker. And so he kind of worked alongside my mom, and he did loans. And so I actually, for a few summers when I was in school, I would, help him as a loan processor. Like during the huge, short sale craze, I was helping him process short sales. And so like real estate has always kind of been in the family. I didn't actually expect myself to join that route as well. I actually worked in tech for several years, after college. And then real estate just came more recently, in terms of a full-time thing. Um, and so yeah, I the story of me coming starting my path of real estate investing really started off earlier this year. I was in tech during
Mm-hmm.
the layoffs. I was a bystander of that layoff, the tech layoffs, and so I had a choice at that point. I was like, okay, I can I can go look for another job in tech. Tech is a bit more challenging now just for finding a
Yeah.
job, just, because of the whole situation with the economy. But yeah, my choices were to get another job, maybe like shift to a different industry, or just go into real estate. And then like at that point, I was watching a lot of like Pace's videos. Like I
Yeah.
watched one, and like they added like a cookie to my to my server, and all of a sudden I'm
Yeah.
constantly getting all these ads, and
Yep.
and like the YouTube rabbit hole. And and I wasn't mad. I actually learned a lot from watching those videos. And so that really just kind of sparked that, like, this is possible. And like, do I want to go back to work a W-2 and help build someone else's dream, or do I want to start building my own dream, right?
Yeah. Be your
And
own boss.
right. And so like, after being on the hamster wheel for so long, I was like, it's time. Like, let's go. um so
That's
I
incredible.
Yeah, so I came to Florida. I mean, I have family here, so it's not like it's like a huge change. I don't know anybody, so I have family here. So I moved here, and yeah, I just kind of hit the ground running. Just started getting into real estate, learning as much as I can, drinking from the water hose, in sub two, learning everything I possibly can. And I'm still learning so much. And then, yeah, so working on building up my own business.
I find that so incredible that your parents are also in real estate. I mean, one being a real estate agent, the other one you said working at a broker or
Mortgage broker. Yeah.
mortgage broker. That is amazing because I would imagine, I can't speak for everybody, of course, but like if my parents were doing that as a career as I'm growing up and in the summer I'm helping them, I don't think I would have had any other job. I think I would have went into that field like almost immediately, after school. But I find that I'm actually blown away by that. It's almost like this career path for you might have actually been destined for you.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like, does a child growing up actually want to do exactly what their parents do? Like, I think kind of how me and my two sisters see it is like, oh, like my parents are doing this. I don't want to do the same as them. Ew, that's boring. And so we tried to do something else. But I
Yeah,
mean, ultimately, as I got older, I started really like I feel like my mind opened up so much more to like all the potential, the possibilities. And I don't want to be a real estate agent. I don't want to process
right.
mortgages, but the investing side just it's like a whole like,
It's fascinating.
yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And so it's a no-brainer for me.
Okay, so how did you discover Pace? Because you are in three of his mentorships, I think. Sub two, Gator, and TC, top tier TC. How
Yeah.
did you first discover Pace?
I actually I used to, I don't remember how the real estate type YouTube videos started getting recommended to me a few years ago. It
Hmm.
was actually at the beginning of the COVID, pandemic. And I was watching Jameel stuff, and then Bigger Pockets, Jameel came up, and all that kind of came up. Pace was also in the mix.
Yeah,
I don't. It definitely Sub Two was just coming out then. I didn't really think too much about it. I was like, I don't know what this is. I
yeah,
don't know who this Pace guy is. I'm listening to Jameel and everyone
yeah,
else, and so I mean, looking back, I'm like, darn, I should have joined then. But anyways, so
yeah.
that's like the first time I saw Pace and I heard of him. And then it wasn't until like more recently, like this last year, that I started really paying attention to what he was saying. And I started to really see, what creative financing is and how relevant that is in this current economy and all the possibilities. And so, I mean, yeah, I guess to answer your question, YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah, I think a lot of people discover
Yeah.
Jamil, Pace, Brent on YouTube. And it's funny because once you discover one of them, it is not long after
Mm.
that you're going to discover the others too.
Right, right.
Those three, they kind of like go hand in hand. My YouTube videos, oh my God, almost every recommendation is something real estate related, real estate investment related. But then it's also 9 times out of 10, it's one of those three: Jamil, Pace, Brent. So
Pretend,
it's
yeah.
kind of funny, but yeah.
And the more you
So
watch, right, the more they just like label you as like the real estate person and then
ab-
give you only those
absolutely.
videos.
And the
Right.
next thing you know, you're 2 hours in on YouTube videos and stuff.
Easy. Easy.
So did you join Sub 2 first before Gator?
I joined Gator first.
Gator
And so
first.
the
Okay.
reason for that is because Sub 2, it was a larger financial commitment. And
Yes.
I was like unsure. I think, and like a lot of people, I didn't know anyone in Sub 2, so I didn't have like
Hmm.
someone to ask about it. Like you go on the forums and you can't see too much about it. And so like I was like, is it, something, is it worth it? But then Gator started popping up on my news feed and I was like, well, I
Hmm.
mean, this also sounds good and it's a lot cheaper. So
Yeah.
so I joined Gator. And
Yeah.
then like, after seeing, from the Gator perspective, and I was only a few weeks into Gator when I was like, okay, I have to join Sub 2, right? But from Gator, I saw how much value Pace provided. And
Yeah.
like I was really able to see something that he created, like what he provides, um, how just how much he gives and all of these, like all the bonuses that they provide beyond what's promised. And then I was like, well, if Gator's gonna be this much and he's always talking about Sub 2, like what is that gonna be like? And so curiosity, just wanting to know more,
Absolutely.
just, you know, I it was a no-brainer at that point.
For sure. Anybody that watches this, if you don't know who Pace Morby is, I would look him up. He is, besides the fact that I think he's an absolute genius at what he does, just the way his brain works, the way he thinks, he's the ultimate go-giver. Like, I'm not in sub 2 yet, but I will be. It is a goal of mine. But everybody that I hear that's in it, yourself, other students that I've networked with, anybody on the Facebook groups that I hear talk about sub 2, everybody raves about it, the community, how much value you get from it. So it's 100% worth it. It's worth the investment, and then it's just, up to the individual to do the work.
Mm-hmm. And
But yeah,
just to add to that, like sub 2, you think creative financing, but like there's really so much more. Like
yeah,
he literally opens the door to like every single path you can think of within real estate and every avenue that you can make money. He like
mhm,
points it out and gives you direction. So, everyone's personalities are different. And like he has the Avatar series, where you
yeah.
can like learn your avatar and you know which route to take, and he shows you every single roads you didn't even know were possible, and that's what's like really so amazing about sub 2.
What's your avatar?
So I am visionary.
Mm,
I'm doing actually now direct to seller, and so I like to just go out and find those deals. That's kind of like my thing. I'm also a TC, so there's like integrator aspects to me. I like to know, what's going on in the paperwork behind the scenes. So I'm doing both right now. I'm, a TC for a few transactions. I'm also just like, learning how to talk to sellers better and be able to work on my closing abilities. And yeah, that's
right.
where I'm at right now.
How's the direct to seller going for you? You said
It,
that's something you just started doing?
I literally just started like 2 days ago. Like I was calling agents prior,
Yeah,
and that was like part of a team. So I left that team 2 days ago, which is why I'm starting to do direct to seller. But yeah, I was doing direct to agent at that time, which is a whole nother set of skills, which we'll
100%.
talk about another time. But
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So my main avatar is just the one that's going out finding the deals, bringing them in, and then I'm actually kind of looking for a partner slash might have one already. I don't really know yet, but I'm talking to people because I want to build a partnership so that when I do bring that in, I have someone to hand off that contract or that lead to, and then like build my
maybe
own.
somebody with a little more experience
Right.
that could
Yeah,
help
or
guide.
just
Yeah.
someone to handle a different aspect. Because if you think of the whole business with the
Hmm.
acquisitions and the dispositions and everything in between, and like if I want to buy and hold it, like managing properties, so like each one of those is its own department. And so
Right.
my what I'm working on is building partnerships with other people so that like we can have all those gaps filled with people of different experiences.
Makes sense. Makes
Yeah,
perfect sense. Yeah. So, top tier TC. Can
yeah.
you just tell us a little bit about that? Haven't networked with too many people that are TCs, but is there a difference between a top tier TC, or is that just the name of that particular course from Mali, I believe?
Right. And so that's top tier TC is like the TC company that kind of helps Pace, like,
Hmm.
process all of his transactions. And so that's top tier. And the focus of top tier is, creative because, Pace only buys creative. And
Absolutely.
so what top tier TC really is Pace wanted to create a standard for transaction coordinators in the creative world, right? Because in like traditional real estate, they have their TCs, they have their process, but when it comes to creative, there's no real course or guidance for anyone who wants to start getting into that besides just kind of
Yeah.
like jumping in there and learning as they go. And so this was a course to help like show like what does a sub 2 transaction look like from beginning to end, and what are all the components in the middle, all the little nitty gritty stuff, like
Hmm.
what problems can arise. And then yeah, and so there's like wraps, seller finance, there's novations, there's all these different creative styles. And it's I personally don't know all of them at this time, but I mean that's what I'm learning from top tier TC. And we have weekly Zooms multiple times a week, just adding to their own Zoom vault. And so it's amazing to just be like on the ground floor, like one of the first people in top tier TC, because it's such right now it's such a huge need in the market, right? Like there's a lot of TCs, but there's not a lot of creative TCs.
Right, and that's what sets you apart.
Yeah, and the sub
or anybody that is a top tier TC.
Right. And there's like 11,000 plus sub 2 members right now.
Wow.
And growing. It's growing rapidly. And so think about how many transactions will be happening and how much demand there will be for this top tier TC, service.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to make sure I understand this correctly, though, at the top tier TC, you're able to help with all the paperwork on any type of creative deal, whether it's seller financing, subject to wraps, anything else that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. And then gator deals as well, like EMD, stuff like that, double closing.
Yeah. So each of these are very different transactions. So like, it depends, right? Certain TCs have different focuses. Some TCs only want to work in a certain region, maybe in a certain state. Some TCs only want to work with a certain type of transaction. Some of them do all of them. And so it depends on what a person's specialty is. Me personally, I want to learn it all, so I do everything. And, sometimes it'll be just like saying yes and learning as I go, partnering up with someone who has done this before and, JVing with them to, get the transaction to the finish line. And so what a TC does, now that you kind of bring this up, it's a bit confusing for some people, but like ultimately we are the ones who manage the transaction from beginning to end in terms of like making sure all the paperwork, the appropriate paperwork, goes through. We communicate between all the parties because there's, a lot of people just talking to each other. So you're that central hub that, sends this information over to the title company and you talk to the seller over here and the buyer over here.
Yeah.
And we manage the timelines, make sure, the inspection period, everyone knows, has everything done prior to then. When is close of escrow? Do we have all the appropriate paperwork before then? And one more thing I just wanted to mention that people think a TC does, which, it's really important. TCs are not necessarily the ones who draft contracts for people, right? We don't help you fill out your contracts. We don't help you, if there's like negotiating happening, like that's all the investor's job, right? We don't want to deal with that, meddle in any of that, because that's when legal issues start to come up, right? So we stay in our place. You handle like getting the contract signed. We can help you advising how the appropriate way is to fill that contract out. But ultimately, that's on you, right? Send me your filled out contract. Everything's pre-negotiated, and then
do you review the contract?
Yes. Yeah. So that's another big thing. Like the TC is that extra set of eyes. A lot of the times there issues come up, like, names are misspelled, addresses are wrong, the lot number, APN, everything, something could be off on the title report. They might pull up the wrong property. There might be a whole bunch of different liens on there that weren't, disclosed at the beginning. And so the TC is really that extra set of eyes that helps you catch these types of things, right? Like if there's a John Smith that was selling his home, the title report, they pull up John Smith Jr., right? That's a whole nother person.
Yeah, for sure.
But, those are the types of things that come up more frequently than you would think, that a TC's job is to make sure, is accurate. And if that there is misinformation, we point that out.
A top tier TC will help you, will not hurt you. That's what it sounds like. Sure. The extra set of eyes will only benefit you, and making sure everything is moved along the way with the paperwork and, getting everything done within your inspection period, anything that needs to be done with the title company as well. So I'm all for it. Like I don't think I will do a deal without one. So.
Yeah, that's what Pace says. It's like the whole point, even if people can do the transaction without one, like if your motive is truly to scale up and do more transactions, do you really want to spend all your time like reading through the fine print in the paperwork, or do you want to go out there and find more deals? So ultimately, like, my job as a TC is to help you, track your KPIs and make sure that you are getting more deals because you're not spending your time on the more mundane tasks, right?
Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so what advice would you give anybody that's new looking to get into real estate investment? Whether it's just, let's just keep it kind of simple. Maybe wholesaling. Would you recommend they start going direct to agents or direct to sellers? Anything else that you would steer somebody new that wants to get in the game?
I think, I mean, if you are following Jamil, they all do direct to agent. And I think personally, like, it would depend on where you're at right now. Like, direct to agent is the best way to get into it if you want free leads, right? Agents are
Mm-hmm.
just disclosing their contact information, everything publicly because they want people to call them. And so you don't have to skip trace or anything. You just, you find
That's
them
true.
on Zillow or free
Yep.
source.
Yep.
You get their information, you call them, and that's a lead right there, right? So if I truly had no money and I wanted to start wholesaling, I would say get direct to agents, right? And just take action, start calling, and then go from there. I would also just partner up with someone who does know what they're doing, so that when you do have something, under contract or negotiated, or someone's interested, you don't know how to proceed, like, send it off to the next person in line, send it off to that more experienced person who can help you move the deal forward. And from there, you might need to, like, split commissions, or split your assignment with them, but, like, you learn so much through that process,
The
right?
experience is invaluable
It's
for sure.
everything. And then, like, once you know how to do it, you can do it on your own, and then you can just crank those out. And so that's what
Yep.
I would do if just starting out.
Yeah, absolutely. As students for Pace Morby, we're constantly told to take action and to network. Nothing's going to happen without those two. As Pace, I've heard him say, especially here recently, that he doesn't make any money without anybody else involved. He's always talking to other people, networking in his circle, his students, whoever it is. Um, he does a lot of direct to seller, obviously, so there's a lot
Mhm.
of talking to people there that he doesn't know as well. But for anybody that's new, networking is huge.
Huge.
You have to meet other people that are doing this. You want to surround yourself with other people that are doing this, because you will meet people that have done this, that have experience, that could help guide you, and that guidance early on would be very important. And taking action, you have to take action. I mean, just plain and simple, nothing's gonna come about this if you don't pick up the phone.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
all full truth there.
And also, like, just think about, like, from my perspective, joining Step 2, and I think even in Gator, right? Like, there's so much content to watch. I can literally spend all day watching those Zooms, and it'll never end. And I can keep absorbing so much information, but without any action, I'm not going anywhere. Right? My
Yep.
business is still at a standstill and still at nothing. And
Yep.
so, I mean, I've drank from that info hose for, plenty of time.
Mhm.
I know as much as I need to know to just get started. And then from here, I just need to start, like, taking action, doing the stuff that's not comfortable, doing the stuff that I don't want to do. Right. And
Yep.
so that's the only way you're going to grow in the business. That's the only way you can see any type of success, income,
100%.
anything. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, this actually, time flew by. I'm surprised how long we've been on here, but yeah,
Right.
I think we're about to end this here. But just to recap, Tiffany Shao, you are a sub two member. You are a Gator. Gator can help you fund EMD, double closing, whatnot. Top tier TC, you can help people with their deals, with their paperwork, or just helping them get their deals across the finish line, guiding them, making sure everything's correct. And anything else you want to add so that anybody watching this can reach out to you for a way they find that you can bring them value?
I mean, if you have any transactions you want me to TC for you, you can hit me up. Maybe my phone number, I could just give that out. It's 650-773-8282. You can also find me on Facebook. I think I'm just Tiffany Chow 01. Yeah, one was taken. So
Tiffany
01.
Chow must have been taken.
Yeah, and Instagram though, I'm Tiffany Chow 1, and so
Okay,
I don't know if that's confusing, but I mean, if you type in my name, you should find me.
sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, well, Tiffany, I want to thank you so much for being the very first guest on my podcast. This was great.
Number
So,
one.
yeah. All right. Bye.
See ya.